So good morning to you all. Let me start by saying what a pleasure and an honor it is to be here, not just in the wonderful city of Istanbul, but also in this very special venue. It breeds democracy, and it breeds also ambition, and that is what we need, and also maybe some hope. I'll come back to that. It's December. We are, 2 weeks before some break in Europe, I hope also in Turkey. Christmas, end of the year, New Year. It's always a time that you take time to think about what happened last year. And it was a dreadful year. It was an awful year. Not on a personal level, but that's not the issue. But it was a dreadful year. And I think for a lot of Europeans, for a lot of progressive Europeans, for the socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament, it was a very difficult year. But most probably it was much more difficult for CHP and for Turkey because we are having problems. But what happened the last couple of months in this country, well, I don't have the words for that. And we really need to think very thoroughly on what's happening and how to proceed. And you would think in a year like this, and of course there has been difficult years before that. We had the corona crisis, and then the war in Ukraine. That was, well, it sort of went into the DNA of Europe. I have to always explain to my daughter what a privilege it is to live in the European Union, but we're also a little bit, how do you say that? We've been so lucky to have decades of safety, of security, of wealth, of progress. And that is no longer. And we have to deal with that. And in this last year, with the Trump administration, things have gotten much worse. And I'm quite convinced, I don't know if you share that thought, but I think so, that what happened in Washington has a very negative impact on many issues, but also here in Turkey. It gave the Erdogan regime a lean way to do what he's been doing the last couple of months. And you would think in that area, in that situation, because really think of it, the nation, so important nation as the United States, who merely also invented multilateralism, they even were extremely supported and were, together with some very important figures in Europe, they invented the European Union because they truly believed that working on multilateralism, working on a strong European Union would make not just Europe, but the world a better place, a safer place. And that country is now undermining all of that. And in that context, building on the relations between Europe and Turkey is key. And it is so obvious, but difficult today, because how do you do that with a Turkey that is backsliding on democracy, on the rule of law? It's a very, very important, but also extremely difficult task. And that's the reason why we have this conference today. And that is the reason why we will need to take the time, when we have some time off, to see how we will proceed in the next year. Because next year will be key for our relations to deal with all these challenges ahead of us. And many of you thanked the S&D for being so supportive. And let me first give the honor to Nacho for all the work that has been done the last couple of, years, but especially also the last couple of months. If it wasn't for Nacho, there would not be a strong reaction coming from the European Parliament. And there has been a strong reaction coming from the European Parliament. Because Nacho is Nacho. Now I learned, I didn't know that. He knows more about Turkey than you guys do. So that's news for me. But we know what he does in the European Parliament in also convincing other political groups to be strong on these issues. So thank you very much, Nacho, and we will need you and your competence and your knowledge to proceed in the next coming years on that. But can I be critical also on what happened in the European Union? Because despite the voice of the European Parliament, and let's be honest, the voice of the S&D in that, the other two institutions were absent, silent, and that is an absolute disgrace. You cannot work with double standards, and Europe is keeps on doing that. Of course, what's happening in Ukraine is extremely important. Of course, it is important that we stick with Ukraine, military, budgetary, and we work on a safe and sustainable peace. It is key, but it doesn't give Europe a leeway to turn a blind eye and work with double standards. When it comes to Turkey, only a week ago I was in Belgrade, it's very comparable. Huh? The backsliding in Serbia is it's not the same, but it is comparable. And on these issues, Europe thinks, well, the world is already difficult, and we have to deal with Trump, difficult, and then Putin, difficult. I know, but you don't want a peace in Ukraine and then wake up the next morning and see that there is no more democracy in Turkey. You don't want to do that, and that's what we need to work on. And for that, connecting progressive democratic parties is of the essence, and we have not done enough the last couple of years. Let me also be self-critical on what we do within the S&D. Of course we kept on working together, but we really need now a plan for the future. And you can see that because it's extreme right. We're amongst ourselves. Huh? What's happening in the United States today is extreme right. They organize themselves on a global scale in a very efficient way. We progressive, we social democrats, it is in our DNA to be internationally organized. Looking at the FES, you know, the FES is, they are co-organizers today, and I'm also, everywhere I go, I went in Tbilisi, in Belgrade, everywhere I see these excellent people of the FES, because that's the way we used to work, and you should not be the only one standing still. That is, work together with the progressives and create not just alliances, but also strategies, and we don't have a strategy today, and we need a strategy. And for be able to have that strategy, we need to work together. S&D cannot do that on your own. CSP, and I'm so happy. It's always difficult traveling a lot. It's fatiguing, but you need to do that. That's what we missed during Corona, of course, because you need to see each other in the eyes to truly see what you believe in. But you also need to really listen to each other. And what I learned just being here, I knew that, but I saw that, and that's the difference. How strong CHP is today. How strong you are, although you are under so much pressure, and how embedded you are in this wonderful democracy in Turkey, by not just being in the parliament, but having so much mayors, strong mayors, a lot of women mayors. And that makes you a very progressive party as well. We have recreated the Willy Brandt program within S&D. We've done that before with the other enlargement, and it is my full ambition, and I hope we can get there. And for that, again, we need each other to use the Willy Brandt program to connect all these parties in the enlargement countries and learn from each other and create a common strategy together with the PES, together with the FES, combining all the knowledge that we have to make a strategy. And for that, 2026 will be very important. We don't have that much time. You don't have that much time here in Turkey, but we don't have that much time. You've mentioned it. The decline of democracy is not just happening here. It's not just happening in Serbia. It's not just happening in the US. It is also happening within the European Union. And I think for a very long time, we've taken not just our wealth and our safety and security, but also our democracies as a given, as a self-evidence, something that would always be there. You know, the only way is up. There will be more democracies in the world. It will go in that direction. That's what we thought a decade ago or 2 decades ago. We know that's no longer true. But at the same time, it's us that has the capability, and with us I mean the progressives, the Democrats, the one who believe that another direction is possible. We have the capability of doing that. We've made the European Union, we made the peace, you made Turkey, and we can make a better future together. Let's take that. It's too early because it's not yet New Year, but let's take that as a sort of engagement of all of us. This is just a starting point. Next year, we will develop that strategy, and we will make sure that not just Turkey, but not also other parts of the world, including Europe, will backtrack on what is our fundamental value. Thank you.